Hey, it's Ollie, and today I'm going to reply to a question that came through here on YouTube from Roy, who asked, how do you start having more fluent conversations with native speakers in a language? So when I think about this question, I kind of, in my mind, I go back to all the languages that I've studied, which at this point is about 9 or 10 to various different levels. And I think about, like, at what point did my ability to really speak confidently or fluently with people really kick in? And it all seems to center around the point at which I actually start having more conversations. You know, it sounds kind of obvious, but I actually realized the other day that for many people this isn't such an obvious point. In fact, I received an email from somebody, Courtney, actually. I mentioned her in the last video, who said, she said to me, Ollie, like, one of the most important things I learned from you was that in order to become fluent in Spanish, you've actually got to speak Spanish. Now again, like, I can just see a lot of you guys just like screaming at the screen now, saying, well, that's obvious. But here's the thing, we are conditioned through the school system and through the language education system in general to study languages. We get taught from the beginning, okay, you've got to get your grammar right, you've got to learn how to conjugate these verbs, you've got to memorize this vocabulary, you have to do this, that and the other. And many people approach the task of learning a language by seeing it as a picture that needs to be completed, like a kind of paint by numbers thing, where when you kind of get to the end and you filled in the picture, then you can speak. But it doesn't work like that. Language is not something, it's not a set of rules that we learn in our head and then gradually, and then that kind of blossoms into the ability to speak. It doesn't happen like that. When I think about when I've kind of gone from early stages of a language to being able to really speak it with confidence, and I think about where that confidence comes from. I mean, yes, it comes on the one hand from the words I learn, the grammar I study. Yeah, all of that stuff helps. But you've got to see that within the context of actually spending hours and days and weeks actually communicating with people. Because every time you communicate with a native speaker of the language, you figure out how to do something better. You figure out maybe a more precise meaning of a word that you've learned. You figure out how to respond more naturally when they say, when they ask you to repeat, or when they ask you a question. You try and say, you use a phrase or expression yourself, and then they don't understand, so you kind of have to reformulate it a little bit. All these things kind of paint the picture of what is a kind of a second-on-second decision-making process that is speaking another language. And at first, all that stuff has to be conscious. You've got to kind of analyze all the different moments of speaking, and you might do this consciously or unconsciously. You might recognize, okay, I tried to use that word and it didn't work, so now I'm going to try it again, and I'm going to try it in a different way with a different pronunciation and see if he gets it this time. Or okay, that grammar didn't quite work, or I was a bit too slow, so I'll try it again the next time. There are all these kind of split-second decisions that we make, and what speaking gives you that nothing else can give you is the practice, the ability to practice at putting all these elements together, bringing an order to the chaos, and then eventually what happens is you end up landing on this kind of middle point somewhere where all the different elements of the language you're trying to deal with just seem to converge, and then you realize that actually you've kind of got to a point where now your communication is at a minimum threshold whereby the other person can comfortably listen to you without too much strain or stress, and you can get your point across quite easily. That's the kind of tipping point that I think we're always aiming for. And something that is easy to forget for those of us who kind of live and breathe languages, but I see more and more, and I'm trying to become more and more aware of, is that for many people, they never get to that point of actually speaking the language a lot, because they are too preoccupied with the study of it and figuring out, what's the next word I'm going to learn, what's the next grammar point I'm going to learn, how am I going to complete the next chapter in my book or the next term of my course. You've got to get to a point where you start speaking regularly with people. Now, we can argue about when the best time is, whether you should do it early or later. My preference is for earlier, because I think it's good to learn these lessons sooner rather than later. But you know, when I'm thinking, Japanese was an interesting case for me. I'd studied by myself for over 2 years unsuccessfully, and I was just I was doing it all mentally. It was textbooks, it was classes, and it wasn't until I said to myself, right, I am going to speak Japanese every damn day for at least an hour, and I kind of loaded myself up with language exchanges and speaking opportunities, and started speaking every day. And then, you know, within a few weeks, my level of comfort and fluency in the language just absolutely skyrocketed, because I was just waiting for this opportunity to be able to put everything into practice and organize the chaos in my head, give some kind of order to the chaos. So that's a very long-winded way of saying that the best way to start having more fluent conversations with native speakers in the language is to actually get out there and create opportunities to speak. And I really, you know, if we're going to quantify it, I think you need to be doing it at least 3 or 4 times a week. My preference would be for 5 or 6 times a week if you can. Those can be 30-minute sessions on italki, for example, where you can get quite affordable speaking partners. There can be language exchanges in your hometown. It could be with your partner or family member. But it's through the regularity of speaking every day that you get accustomed to how speaking should be in the language. You get to learn from your speaking partner, and that's how you become more confident and ultimately more fluent. All right, so I hope that's helpful. Don't forget to subscribe to the channel if you like this and want more videos of the same ilk, and I'll see you back maybe in the park for the next video.